Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Joe Lalo, and with me, as always, is Jeffrey Poole and Lindsay Broker. Today, our guest is author M.C.A. Hogarth, and for a little bit of background before we start in, she's the daughter of two Cuban political exiles and was born a foreigner in the American melting pot. She's had a fascination for the gaps in cultures and the bridges that span them ever since. She has been many things: a web database architect, a product manager. Yeah, you're a political manager. Technical writer, massage therapist. But you're currently a full-time parent, artist, writer, and anthropologist to aliens, both human and otherwise. So, now that we're through that, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We're going to start with asking just the usual intro questions for an author. How did you get started in writing?
I guess I like most authors, I started writing as a child. I think my first story was about Pac-Man, and I probably wrote it with crayons. And I made about 60 different Pac-Man ghosts and gave them all names. Yeah, that was my illustrious beginning as a writer. I don't think I stopped from that point.
Fantastic. You see, it's expanding upon other people's settings.
There you go.
So, what are your favorite genres?
Oh, well, I read everything. I read historical, romance, science fiction, fantasy, literary, classic, nonfiction. I don't think there's anything I don't read, actually. Mostly science fiction and romance. I like those best, I think.
Well, I think being a voracious reader is part of the background for an author. What would you say inspires you?
What inspires me? I'm so used to just working that I don't... Like, people ask me what inspires me, and I'm like, I don't know, I just sit at the keyboard and make myself work. I just really like stories about people. I like people. I guess if I had to choose something, that's the thing that inspires me. I love people.
Well, characters are, a good story needs good characters, and good characters are people.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, now that we've got the mandatory author questions out of the way, one of the reasons that we sought you out was that there's been a change to SFWA's policies. I've learned that I should be pronouncing it as a word instead of as letters, which is good because we have forgotten what some of the letters mean anyway. So let's talk about SFWA, which I believe is the Science Fiction Writers Association.
And fantasy.
And fantasy. The extra F doesn't show up.
No.
Although it would be pronounced SFWA anyway, so another good reason to call it that.
Yes.
So what exactly is that organization, and what does it do?
Okay, well, the SFWA is an organization that's been around for professional writers of science fiction and fantasy. We're having the 50-year anniversary of the organization being founded, so that's how long we've been around. The mission being to help professional writers of science fiction and fantasy to further their careers. They do a lot of things. They're responsible for Writer Beware, which I think a lot of people know about. They host and award the Nebula Awards. They name the Grand Masters every year. And there's a bunch of other things that are internal to the organization that non-members don't know about. They have a legal fund. They have an emergency medical fund. So basically, and we have a quarterly magazine, the Bulletin, which non-members can also subscribe to, which has business and historical and articles just of use for career science fiction and fantasy writers. So that's basically what they've been doing for 50 years.
All right, sounds like a lot of really excellent resources for people who are trying to make a go as a professional author.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess expanding upon that, what value does it have for indie authors, would you say? Like, how much of that do you think is applicable to indie authors?
I think a surprising amount of it is useful. people always ask me why would I join, and I say the same reason you would join any networking association for any profession. The chance to meet people and to share knowledge and to be able to get together and do things. For instance, a bunch of us organized a sale together that we cross-promoted to each other's readers, and then we did get a lot of good money out of that. It was nice. You can talk to editors who are also part of the organization, and you get some invitations to anthologies and magazines that way. We run lovely con suites at lots and lots of conventions, so if you need a place to just hang out and have some food and talk with other pros, and that's a good place to do it. Basically, all the things that you get accomplished by talking to other people, it's a great way to do that in, the very specialized genre that we work in. So I've gotten a tremendous amount out of it in the 3 years since I renewed my membership, because I actually started in 2000, but then I lapsed for a while. And then once I became an indie, I joined again after the Space Marine debacle thing, and I've gotten some useful things. The bulletin also has some great articles. They had articles about Kickstarter, about taxes, about just all sorts of things that are very useful to know.
All right. For people who aren't well versed in the history and dealings of SFWA, what exactly is the Space Marine debacle?
Well, the Space Marine, they were not involved with it. I just rejoined afterwards because I thought it would be nice to have access to a legal fund in case something like that happened to me again. But in basic, I wrote a novel about a Space Marine because I like science fiction and Space Marines are everywhere. It was about a middle-aged enlisted mom Marine. Front cover has a big picture of her with long flowing hair. It was very girly, along with aliens and power armor, because, why not? And then Games Workshop, the gaming company over in the UK, talked to Amazon and got the book blocked. So Amazon took it down because they claimed that I was infringing on their trademark, which was...
This is the Warhammer people, I guess?
Yes, the Warhammer people. They said that they own the term Space Marine, and I was not allowed to have it in the title. And Amazon's policy on that is not to get involved in third-party disputes. So they just took the book down and said, you guys work it out. And they had no incentive to work anything out because they got what they wanted.
Yeah.
So I had to, there was the claim was completely spurious. They didn't own any trademark for Space Marine in the class that I was operating in, which is novels. They didn't own it in the U.S. They had no right to do any of this stuff, but I would not be able to sell that book anyway if it weren't for the Electronic Frontier Foundation, who rode to my rescue, talked to Amazon, and got it reinstated. And it was a huge brouhaha. I think I had 60,000 hits on my website in 2 hours. It was insane. But it did resolve itself with help, and that was good. And at the time, the president of SFWA had said something about it being, a stupid thing for a Games Workshop to have done. I'm like, well, it's nice to see them taking the side of someone who is primarily indie published, so I guess I'll go hang out with them and see what they've done in the past 10 years. And it's been good.
All right. So, just rolling it back a little bit, then SFWA is, I would say, from what you said, broadly speaking, just a larger and better established version of many of the communities that the indies have already sort of formed on their own, with a lot more resources.
Probably, yeah.
So
that's
it
fine.
would be familiar territory for a lot of us if we were to join.
Right.
All right. Now we'll talk about. There's been change recently to allow indies to sort of join. Well, I should say, to sort of codify a way for self-published indies to join at the very least. So, what are these new requirements?
So the new requirements are as close as we could manage to get them to the existing requirements for traditionally published authors, which means you have to be able to prove somehow that you have sold or collected royalties or collected money on 3 short stories, I think, of 10,000 words or something like that, at 6 words, 6 cents a word. So you can do it that way. Or you have to prove that sometime between January 2013 and now, in a single year, for one book, you have earned somehow $3,000. And that can be via Kickstarter, it can be royalties, it can be an advance from a small press, whatever combination of those things works to get you to the $3,000 mark in 1 year for one book, that will get you in.
Okay, so that's in 1 year. Does that year have to be the preceding year? It can be sort of in your entire literary history.
I think it has to be between January 2013 and now, because we can't go retroactive too much further back than that because it would be troublesome for the committee, I think.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. So, as long as you've had, you've met the requirements within that time span. But if you met it beforehand, then you're going to have to prove that you've also met it within that time span.
Yes.
Okay. Now you say that you need to prove in some way that that your titles qualify.
Yes.
In some way, can you expand upon that, or is that not yet nailed down?
We have not nailed it down, and we left it loose right now because we want to see what kind of documentation people are bringing us. We had examples from within the organization of things that say, I would use to make that proof. But we figured until we actually asked for it, we wouldn't be able to see the range of things that people could bring to the table. And so, things like 1099s, spreadsheets, screenshots of your dashboards, links to your Kickstarter campaign that has already been funded, and we can find the book online now and buy it. So right now we're still deciding on what kind of things are best for that proof, because we don't want to just disqualify people who are doing like outrageously cool things like earning $6,000 a month on their Patreon serializing a novel. I mean, we want to catch all those people. So we're making the attempt to be as inclusive as possible. And I suspect for the next few months it's going to be an adventure.
Yeah, a little bit of the Wild West out there.
Yes.
It seems likely that, I mean, if you've been at this for a while, you've had to report your earnings to the government.
Of course.
So chances are most indie authors who have been at this long enough to qualify, and with enough success to qualify, at least have the records, in their grasp to be able to prove it.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully. Well, again, we'll find out.
Yes.
Kind of loosey-goosey at the moment. Okay, now I was a little confused. You sort of explained this, but the wording, like I'd looked into SFWA a bit in the past, and I was sort of curious. Like a lot of it is qualifying markets, and also cents per word, like getting paid a professional rate.
Right.
And I was confused a little bit. Like some of the wording I saw in the announcement said, a total of 10,000 words paid at 6 cents a word, and that sounded to me like we're still dealing in old publisher terms, where you're being paid for your story on a word basis. But it seems like, as you've described it, that basically means if you have a short story of 10,000 words, then you have to have earned enough from that short story for it to equal 6 cents a word.
Basically.
Okay. Well, that all right. Then that's still very indie friendly. That doesn't require sort of a traditional style publication.
No. If the reason why we still have the qualifying markets in there, it's just a way to say, if you have already sold there, we don't need extra documentation from you. We already know how to handle that. So that's just for people who are, maybe you sold one story, and then you have proof that you have done indie publishing at 6 cents a word or more for, these 2 other stories you've sold on Amazon. Send all that in, and then, we get a combination of things.
Okay. Now, I guess this is, let's say that you are sort of a hybrid, right? And you've had some small degree of success with sending in stories to previously qualifying networks, obviously markets, that is. But you've had a greater degree of success self-published. If you have a mixture that equals the requirements. Like, how does that work? Do you need to go all one way, all the other, or can you have earned most of your money through indie but put yourself over the top with traditional?
If you have like a combination of things that equal the amounts that we have stated, I would send it in because, as I said, we are still trying to figure out how we want to do it. And the more test cases we have, the more experience we'll have figuring out what we want to do. So I would say give it a go.
You're right. I'm sort of refreshed at the degree of we'll see and feeling things out this is, because I've noticed a lot of times when any sort of traditionally based organization tries to take a dip into the new way things are, they'll make a hard and fast decision which might be on bad information and then have to amend and retroactively alter it. So it's nice to see that we're going to hone in on the right answer.
Yeah, well, we have a standing committee now for indie and self-publishing stuff that is recommending and advising the officers and the volunteers about how we want to handle these things going forward. So I think what you're seeing is the influence of that committee on the decision makers in the organization.
Well, it seems like a good influence.
We try.
All right, one last question before I hand it over for the next phase of the interview. But what sort of author do you think is best served by SFWA membership? Did you say it's more of a semi-pro thing, or should you be a fully pro author? Can you help established authors more than aspiring authors? Like, what's the target?
Well, we just approved a mentorship program. I don't know what the scope of that mentorship program is, but I think anyone who is treating their writing as a career, no matter where they are on that particular trajectory, which makes it sound like a missile, but no matter where you are on that parabola, you will get something out of it. If I wanted to explain the kind of person who will get the most out of the organization, I will say the engaged writer, because like most organizations, you get people who join and then you never hear from them, they never participate, they never vote, they never really get involved, and a lot of the wonderful things that you can get through the organization involve actually connecting with other authors and helping each other out and accomplishing things together. So if you're not like a networking kind of person, if you would rather just do your own thing and not have to worry about all that, it probably isn't a good value. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There are people who aren't social, and that's great. But I think the people who are engaged and really like that part of writing, just hanging out with each other and helping each other out, I think they get a lot out of it. That the people who, that's not their style, I don't think it's really rewarding for them. My perception,
Yeah. So if you're active in other communities, chances are pretty good this is going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah.
Okay. One last thing I didn't have on my list here, but honestly, it's sort of central to the concept. How would you go about joining SFWA now that this change has been made?
Well, the website has a Join SFWA tab, so you can just do that, and then there's a form. The form, last time I checked, they're still fixing the form to allow people to put in like their indie stuff in it, because it's still, it's still more geared towards traditional, but they're changing it, and they're in the process of changing it. And if you run into any problems, then you can just email the person on the bottom of the form and tell them, I need to send you this, and I don't know how, and they'll get back to you pretty quickly. So.
All right. Well, okay. Well, it's fairly straightforward, and we're going to pass you off now to whoever wants to pick up the next section, which will be about standard marketing practices.
I'll do it. Okay. Obviously, since you're an indie author, it's to be expected that you do a lot of. Do you use a lot of social media? For instance, Facebook, Twitter.
I love social media. I don't use all social media because I think I would get sucked into it and never have any mental energy for anything else. But I like Twitter, and I like LiveJournal, and I sometimes use Pinterest, and I think those are the three that I use most often.
Okay, so a question for you with regards to Twitter. I know I asked, we talked about this like a week or so ago, so with Lindsay, I believe it was. But for your Twitter, when you say you do a lot of tweeting,
Hmm.
clearly I'm not a Twitter person there, but I'm curious, is what sort of things do you tweet about? I mean, is it your own personal stuff, like your own thoughts? I mean, what do you actually use it for, if you don't mind me asking?
I try to make people smile. So I would say that probably 75% of the things I tweet are either cute pictures of animals, feel-good news, um, silly comments or retweets of inspiring things, and then I guess another 20% of it is me just talking about my life, and then I guess 5% of it, the remainder is, oh, by the way, I'm having a sale on this book, check it out.
So in essence, you're just pretty much just keeping in touch with the people, not necessarily about your books, just saying, hey, hello, man, I saw this really funny video of this cat jumping in snow. Gotta go take a look. Just anything that would make them smile, essentially.
Yeah, I like talking with people too. It's great for conversation. I like, people will say something to me. I'm like, oh, a chance to talk with a human being. I'm so excited. So I like doing that too.
Yeah, I've done that a little bit on my own blog, where I actually encourage fans just to say, "Hey, how you doing? What do you think about this?" Because I'll actually I'll ask them various questions, and it's amazing how fast you get a response. And I've had quite a few of them actually tell me, "Man, you're like the first author that actually, I write a comment on your blog, and you wrote one back that said, hey, thanks for stopping by,' sort of thing." So yeah, I get a kick out of that. So it sounds like, I mean, of all the social media out there, is it Twitter you use the most? Would you think?
Twitter and LiveJournal. I love LiveJournal. I know
Okay,
it's
if you don't
kind
mind
of
me asking, what is LiveJournal, if you don't mind me asking?
LiveJournal is ancient. LiveJournal is a journaling platform from before blogs were popular, and it's still around, and people still use it. And it has fabulous comment threading and notification. So it's super easy to actually have discussions with people on it because you get really good, it's very easy to read when people are replying to each other, and it's very easy to get notified when you are being replied to. And so it's been around for, I don't know, at least 15 years. And I've been on it since 2008. So I have like a LiveJournal community that's been with me for a long time. So I get a lot of discussion there going. That's pretty rewarding. I really enjoy it.
Do you get many new people show up to this LiveJournal, or are you pretty much just talking to the same people over and over?
I don't know. Over time, the audience has changed. I think as more social media platforms have erupted, people have become more diffuse, and some people have gone to Facebook, and some people have gone to Twitter, and everyone's just kind of dispersed to the place that suits their personality best. But I do notice some new people to replace the people who have left, and it's still the place I get the most discussion and commentary, so it's where I can count on to get people to respond to me.
LiveJournal, I'll definitely take a look at that one. Do you have a mailing list that you use?
Mm-hmm. I do. I love my mailing list. I use MailChimp for it, like many people because it's beautiful and shiny and easy to use and free, which is nice. So.
How would you? I mean, do you like always ask your followers like, hey, don't forget to sign up to the mailing list, or you just put like a link on the blog and let them find it on their own?
Well, when I'm about to send it out, I, remind people, I'm like, well, it's just about time for me to send out my, quarterly newsletter. It's going to have news about this and this special offer and this special gift, so, come sign up if you haven't already. But other than that, I don't push people very much towards it, which is okay.
How often do you send your newsletter out?
It's supposed to be quarterly. Last year it was twice a year, which is bad. I should have been, a little more proactive, but it got away from me. But right now it's quarterly.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people. I'm always unsubscribing from stuff because I think certain things sound good, but they'll hit me like sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a week, sometimes a couple times a day, just posting about. Usually it's just, hey, come buy this book, come buy this book. I mean, if it's one thing if it's like talking about thoughts that, hey, I'm thinking about starting a new series, or I need some help with this character. What do you guys think? I mean, I can understand something like that, but there's some people I think that just use it too much, and in your case, you're saying you should do it a little more often.
Well, because I'll tell you the problem. My release schedule for new fiction is usually 2 to 4 novels a year, new fiction. And then I'll have like ancillary things like children's books and coloring books that'll come out 2 to 6 times a year. So when I say I should be using my newsletter, every newsletter I send out will have like 2 or 3 or 6 new products that people may have just fallen off their radar because I'm putting out so much stuff all the time. So I think it's important for my very good fans who want to keep up with me to get the newsletter, because otherwise they might not have realized that I released something 2 weeks ago and they didn't know about it. So I think it's super helpful for that, for people who don't release quite as quickly as I do. You know, I don't know what they would fill a newsletter with. You know, maybe they do something incredible with it that I'd like to know about, but I wouldn't know what to put in it if I wasn't writing so much. So.
All right, good deal. I think that finishes my questions. Lindsay, you have some for her?
All right, hello. I'd love to jump in. It's so hard for me to be quiet for a half hour. You know, what I'd kind of like to focus on is that kind of looking in from the outside, it looks like you have like a lot of diverse kind of income streams. You're just doing a lot of different things, and I think that people can really get focused on, I got to make money from Amazon, you know, I got to make money from Amazon. So I'd love to ask you just about some of the projects you've taken on, and if you have any recommendations for people. I think you're the first person we've had from doing Patreon on so far, so I definitely wanted to hit on that.
Okay, well, I guess, you know, it's important for any, you know, portfolio to have diversification. I do not want all my eggs in the basket, even though Amazon's basket is enormous. And as much as I try to diversify, the Amazon basket is still so enormous that if Amazon like blew up tomorrow, I would be impoverished. But you know, it's important to me to have other things going on for my entertainment as much as for everybody else's entertainment. So the Patreon thing, that grew out of the fact that for a very long time, and I still do it actually, I just haven't started a new one lately, I was a big part of the web serial community. So I've been running web serials on the internet since 2004 for money. And so, you know, I'd post a bit of something completely original that you couldn't find anywhere else. And then people would tip me to keep me writing, or they would tip me to write faster. That was very popular. Or they would tip me to die heroically in some part of the book, or, you know, just whatever seemed to work. You know, I had my little PayPal jar, and people would subscribe or put tips in. And for a long time, serial money was really good money for me. I think my first serial only made about $600, but the serials after that started making, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 just in tips. You know, nobody was required to pay me. It was just people wanting to pay me. So I would run these things for maybe a couple of years, because that's how long it would take to serialize an entire book. And then after I finished, I would either kickstart an ebook and print book edition, or I would do it on my own dime, or I would sell it to a small press, and then people could buy a physical copy or an ebook copy compiled for people who don't like reading week to week. But what would happen before Patreon is that every month I would be putting in maybe 20 to 30 micro transactions per week of people just giving me $1, $5, $3, $2.50. Sometimes people would give me what was left over in their PayPal account, so it would be like $1.62 or something, you know. And I would be laboriously writing all this down in a spreadsheet so I could report it to the IRS. And sometimes I would spend like 3 hours a month just putting in microtransactions for all these serials. And then here comes Patreon, and now Patreon just gives me a lump sum at the end of the month. I'm like, oh, hallelujah! I have been saved from the microtransaction like horror. So a lot of the people who used to pay me for my serials have been migrating to Patreon because it's easier for them too. Their credit cards just get charged and they don't have to think about it. So that's what I use it for. I've only just started using it to give specific Patreon-only content because I wanted to reward the people who are doing that. And I find the more Patreon-only content I give, the more people give money to the Patreon. So that probably makes sense. So it's a self-sustaining thing, but it does require a lot of work. If you're not already the kind of person who's like throwing tons of content out there, I think Patreon is a hard thing to get going at any mass amount of money. So yeah, I've been doing that. I've been doing Kickstarter. What else? I experiment with other mediums. You know, I've done the coloring books, and I've been doing children's books, and you know, whatever seems to work, I try it. And then if it's the amount of time that I spend on it, the return is enough for me to continue doing it, then I keep doing it. If it's not, then I give it up. Like, I did a webcomic for a while, and the webcomic was fun, but the webcomic just did not return on the investment. And as much as its fans really liked it, I could not justify the amount of time I was spending on it, taking it away from the things that were actually earning. So I axed that experiment. And that's basically how I work with everything, is just throw it at the wall and see if it sticks.
All right, cool. Well, it's great that you're having success and that people are actually tipping you. Because when I see people with those tip jars, I'm like, nobody's going to use that. They're never going to get any money that way.
It does work.
Oh, it's good to know. So is this just like straight fiction that you're serializing? Because you mentioned webcomics, but I know you do art too. So I was just curious if are these novels? Or they eventually become novels?
They've all been novels. About half of them have been novels that I already had written, and then I'm just posting them in pieces. And the other half I was writing ad hoc as people were paying me. So, you know, either way it works. I think people like the ad hoc thing better. I find it more enjoyable as well, but I don't always have the time to be doing an ad hoc thing. So it's a good way to get readers interested in your work because they can go and read it for free, and if they like it, they can go buy it or go find your other stuff or whatever floats their boat.
Okay, and you said that the stuff for the Patreon people, you kind of make it specific for them, or can anybody read it as you're posting, or is it just for the people who are paying?
Right now, I do have Patreon-only content. It's not like my serials. When I do serials, I make them free for everybody, and then I just tell people, if you want to tip me for them, just either use this tip jar or put it in my Patreon, whichever works for you. But you know, I do things like I'll write behind-the-scenes development documents about, you know, settings for different novels, or I think I did a short story that explains a backstory for a character for some book. I wrote it and gave that away to them, and you can't get it anywhere else. So, you know, stuff like that. I find it's a nice incentive, and it's a nice gift. You know, I would sign up for a Patreon for stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the DVD extras that you get when you buy the movie. And I don't know if I actually made it clear. What exactly is Patreon? How does it work for you, and how does it work for people who want to pay money to you?
Okay, well, Patreon is a site that facilitates people who want to pay artists monthly for stuff or just for fun. Or the problem is it allows artists to dictate how they want to use it. So some people will put on Patreons, and then if you give them $5 a month, you will get something in particular. Others will just say, this is a glorified tip jar. There's no rewards or anything like that. You just throw money at it and feel good, warm fuzzies or whatever. So everyone uses it a different way, but in basic, you have the artist, writer, creator, whatever, and you have the person who wants to give them money. And the Patreon part of the system is it just collects money every month in the amount that you state and then hands it over to them. That's the basic part of the transaction, which is what makes it different from Kickstarter, which is Kickstarter collects money for a project and then it's over and that's it. Patreon it's basically forever until you stop. You tell it to stop. So it's kind of like a subscription model versus a project model.
All right, it definitely sounds like something worth checking out. And I love the idea of you kind of getting paid as you're creating the content, and then doing a Kickstarter to get paid to put it together into an ebook or get it edited and everything, I guess. Do you have any? You sound like a Kickstarter queen here. Do you have any tips for people who are thinking of crowdfunding?
I wrote a book on Kickstarter. Literally, you can buy it.
We'll put it in the notes for sure.
I think I've run 8 campaigns, and all of them have funded successfully. I guess if I wanted to give the biggest tip I would give for using Kickstarter is keep your expectations realistic. If you have a tiny fan base, you will not raise a ton of money unless some weird viral thing happens to you. You can't guarantee any of that. You will not get a ton of browsers from the Kickstarter site finding you and thinking you're amazing. So you should basically just look at the size of your fan base and say, you know what, my fan base can probably afford $100 because it's tiny, as opposed to my fan base is, monstrous, George R. R. Martin sized and can fund, $100 billion, so you have to be realistic about your expectations and try as much as possible to go lean and run tight, small, tidy ships. You're more likely to actually achieve your goals if you keep it small.
And are you still finding Kickstarter as effective now as it used to be? I remember recently some author tried to start a campaign, and she was asking for like living expenses or something while she worked on her book, but she got a lot of backlash in the blogosphere, and it just seems like there's some more Kickstarter haters out there now than there used to be.
Well, there will always be people who, you're asking here for an interface between the business world and the art world, and they don't speak the same language, and sometimes they say things the wrong way, and it sounds like something different to the people hearing it than is intended. I don't think anyone thinks that people should starve while making art or make tremendous sacrifices or anything like that. But part of Kickstarter's, it's not like a thing that people have written down, but there's an implicit sense here that everybody who is involved in a Kickstarter, the person who's creating it, the people who are backing it, everyone is taking a risk. The people who are giving you money are risking that you are not going to deliver the product, or it's not going to be as good as you said it is, or any number of other things. But they're going to give you your money, and that's the gamble that they're going to take. But they want from you the sense that you are also reciprocating that risk. And for a creator, that risk is often, I'm going to put my own time and energy into this, and I'm going to assume that if it succeeds, it's going to pay for itself. It's going to continue to be a success, and the energy and the time I put into it is going to be returned to me after that. It's kind of like having a startup. You put your own time into things you believe in the hopes that, they're going to be success because you're the first person who believes in it. So my perception of that is a little bit that when you say, pay for my living expenses, what you're really saying is, I don't want to risk anything. I want everything to be taken care of. I want to, you might not get the product and you might not get the book and it might not be what you want, but I'm still going to have everything at the end because I'll still have been paid. And it sounds a little bit, the Kickstarter, I wouldn't have done it myself because to me, the reciprocal risk is important. We're both promising things to each other, we're both gambling together, and we're both going to succeed together. And I think that's kind of the implicit pact that you make when you do something like that.
All right, definitely sounds like a good idea. Like you were saying, keep it small, not try to ask for the moon. I think people get greedy when they see like, oh, this card game made $1 million, and
It's hard to make $1 million.
All right. Well, let me just ask you one more Kickstarter question. Is your mailing list really important in succeeding in getting funded, or do you think people can still, without an audience, like get maybe help for editing their very first book?
I think if you can reach your fan base, if you know how to reach your fan base, that's all that's important. If your fan base is mostly on Facebook, then you need Facebook. If it's mostly in your mailing list, then you need your mailing list. Where you have developed your community is the place where you need to go to do your advertising. And as long as you keep it small, my Kickstarter is usually $1,500 for a book. And then stretch goals, if we keep earning money, then I can keep adding cool stuff and I can keep affording cool stuff. But, keep it tiny and, make that first goal so that you can keep going.
All right, for sure. And I would love to ask you about, it looks like you do all your own cover art and you've got these coloring books. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your art and how that plays into, do you make money from that too, or is it just kind of something fun to help?
I don't actually do all my own cover art. I do hire artists for different books. Oh. Mm-hmm. I have several freelancers that I really have enjoyed working with them. My new romance novel, I tried a new artist. She was really great. I don't. The funny thing is, I don't actually have time to do my own cover art. A good cover painting for me is between 20 and 40 hours of work, and 20 to 40 hours of writing makes a lot more money than 20 to 4 hours of painting. So that's what was behind my decision to start hiring other artists. Is they have more time to do a great job than I do. When I used to have more free time and I painted for my own enjoyment, I did used to sell paintings, and they would go for $2,000 a piece, and so it was a good use of my time, but it was very time consuming. And to maintain, just like maintaining a community so that people buy your books, you also have to maintain a community for people to get interested in paying for your art, and that takes just as much time. And I have a child and a second job, and something had to give, and it ended up being the art. I still draw for enjoyment, but it's usually quick stuff now. It's not the kind of complex things that I used to do.
Definitely makes sense. So do you do the coloring books? Do you sketch them, or is that something you hire out?
Oh, no, I do that because it's quick. It takes me, I don't know, between 2 and 10 minutes a page to do something like that, and each one is about 20 pages. So it's something I do to relax when I'm waiting for dinner to finish cooking, or my kid is bouncing around my ears and wants to calm down, and I want to get her to sit with me and do something. She'll sit next to me and draw, and we'll draw together. So it works out pretty well.
All right, and I'm curious because I know a lot of people who have, especially children's stuff, will have illustrated books and be wondering how you go about getting those published. Are you doing like CreateSpace for that, or do you have to do something different?
I am, yes. I did self-publish my own children's books. That was a personal decision, not a financial decision. I would not highly recommend self-publication as a road to success for children's books because of how important the library and school markets are for success of books for children. It's very hard to get into those particular markets without a publisher's help. But when I was doing this, I really didn't. The reason why I was doing it is because I wanted to do something with my daughter. So I would sit down with her. We would brainstorm the actual story. I would do the illustrations and show her, and then she would watch me draw them. And then, I would consult with her about what we should put on the cover. She told me once, I'm like, should we put the unicorn on the cover? And she says, Mommy, if you put the unicorn on the cover, the boys won't read it. So So, I wanted to involve her in these decisions. And then she got to see the proof. I showed her the proof copy, and I explained what a proof copy is. And then I showed her the finished copy, which, I dedicated to her. And so she, I saw when she was holding it, she had the sense of, I watched every part of it. I read her the printout of the drafts. Do you like this part? So she really got the sense, wow, this is what it takes to make a book. And that experience is what I wanted more than I wanted, like, success as a children's book author. So, yeah, I self-publish them. I don't make a ton of money with them, and I don't mind.
Sounds like a great project that you can work on together, and I love that she's your marketing advisor. I just had one more question that I actually thought of while you guys were talking about SFWA. Did I say it right?
That's fine.
Close enough. I've always just thought of it as the initials. But I was wondering if do they organize conventions, or are they the people who get authors invited to speak on panels and things, or what kind of role do they play with that?
They do not organize conventions. They do, well, no, okay. We organize one writers gathering. It's not like a convention in the sense of like tons of fans appear or anything like that. But once a year they do the Nebula gathering, and that's for the award ceremony for the Nebulas, but it also includes workshops and speakers and tours of places of interest to writers, and people can attend. I'm pretty sure. I think you can sign up for it. So that's the one gathering we actually run. We're not involved with other conventions in any other way except as a vendor. We have tables at a lot of conventions where members can come and table sit and meet people and sign books and give away materials and things. And a lot of conventions we run a suite for our members. They will check your membership at the door. And there's food and a place to relax away from the bustle and everything like that. And I've heard that we do really good parties. I haven't been to one since 2000, so I don't know what they're like now. But I do know some people who have signed up because they say they like the parties. So
I'll make sure to put that on my form. I heard you guys had rockin' parties. All right. Well, thanks for answering my questions. I'm going to hand you over to Joe, and he's going to ask a couple more and then let you go to bed.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, we just want to close with a few questions we try to ask every author on the way out the door. First off, in terms of marketing, because this is the focus for our podcast, what do you think is going to be effective going forward? What do you think the future trend for marketing is?
I think the future trend of the marketing is community. I think the stronger your community is and the more you put into it, the more you will get out of it.
I certainly hope so, because I spend a lot of time on community. And it's really the most fun form of marketing.
It is.
So I agree with you on that one. And finally, we'll start with where can people find you? Like if listeners want to get in touch with you from this, where would you recommend it?
Okay, well, I think my little tag has my website under it, doesn't it?
That it does.
Okay, so my website is just my name, M.C.A. My Twitter is also M.C.A. Hogarth. I love Twitter, so that's probably the fastest way to say hello to me. I'm on, all the usual retailer sites, except Smashwords, because I hate them. I didn't say that out loud. But Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Kobo and Apple and all those other places. And I'm on LiveJournal, and my LiveJournal handle is Haiku Jaguar. So that's where you can find me.
All right, and I can actually do this little trick because I remember to do it while setting this up. You can find her Twitter and her webpage down in the description on YouTube. So, yay. And finally, is there anything you'd like to plug? Any current projects you'd like to talk about?
Well, I will tell you my bestseller, which is selling really well for me, and I'm quite happy with it, is my science fiction asexual romance. which is basically like a best friends forever buddy novel about aliens. And that it's about two xenopsychiatry students, and it starts with mind touch. And people seem to like that one the best, so that's the one I always point people to when they say, what should I read of yours?
All right, it certainly sounds like it's a unique concept. All right, well, that concludes everything. I want to thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I had a good time. I hope I wasn't too like zombie-ish from being sleepy or anything.
No, better than I was.
Thanks for all the info on SFWA.
You're welcome.
SFWA. And I guess that's it. So see you all next time.
All right, and I will put the links to everything you mentioned tonight, if I can remember it, in the show notes, especially if people want to check out your Kickstarter book or your novel that you just mentioned, which I will remember the name of and link to.
All righty.
Oh, well, thank you so much, everyone.
All right, take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.